Now I want to turn to our final speaker of the day, who is literally the only person standing between you and beverages and freedom from this room. No pressure, Tiffany. But I do think it's important to end here, and I'm going to share a little personal story and explain why. The hunting and fishing community, or as I like to refer to it, the hook and bullet crowd, the rod and gun club, accounts for a majority of the financing and funding for conservation and stewardship in the United States. Clap is well deserved. Now, if you think about how partisan different lanes within the outdoor recreation industry have become over the years, and you start to think about how to find that galvanizing middle spot within that conversation, how do you just start to talk about the things that we all love, regardless of your modality of sport and engagement on or with that natural resource? Our next guest is vitally important and a great way to wrap up the day. So Tiffany Turner, who is the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership's Natural Climate Solutions Director, has been working with the angling and hunting community to help drive federal policies that support their ambitions around climate, habitat protection, and conservation. Now, she's going to speak with us about communicating with conservatives on climate and biodiversity. But what I want everybody to challenge themselves on is what that definition means to you. How can you expand that? What does it mean to speak from a place of the middle with respect to these things that we love? So I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany for a little while, and then we're going to come back for a final Q&A. Tiffany, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very aware that I'm between you and drink, so I'm going to try to make this efficient. If you can go to the next slide. So just a little bit, oh, I have it. And there's all these things up here too. Okay. There's 2 green buttons. Great. Everyone has had trouble with this today, and I thought it surely can't be that hard, but it is. It is slightly confusing and not like anything you've seen before. So just a moment about TRCP. TRCP is a nonpartisan nonprofit that was founded a little over 20 years ago specifically to get the voices of hunters and anglers into federal policy. And we really take the P in TRCP pretty seriously. We have 63 policy partners, and they span between what you would think of the Nature Conservancy, NWF, to National Wild Turkey Federation, and all those in the middle. We have over 27 corporate sponsors and partners in this, and we have 30,000 members, if you can call us members. Not a membership traditional, but 130,000 supporters and members. And they represent the gamut on where they stand, even though you may consider them conservative. And about 2018, our TRCP decided we need to start talking about climate change. We can't be the only people not talking about climate change. And there's such an importance here in us talking about climate change. So sportsmen and women are deeply impacted by climate change. We spend days and weeks in the field experiencing climate change, whether or not we realize that we're in it. And in 2018 to 20, we gathered those partners together to say what it is that we want to say about climate change, that we could focus on nature-based solutions. So we have 41 hunting, fishing, and outdoor partners, conservation organizations, that signed a statement that focused on nature-based solutions because that is where they are credible, that is where it makes sense for us to engage. And there's a climate statement out there, and we've been engaging with Congress, and we know that we can lead. But some of our partners were worried, what about our followers? Are we going to lose them? It's the same conversation for brands and why they might not engage in the conversation. So how do we get people to follow? And so we decided to do a little bit of polling. So in 2022, we reached out to Newbridge Strategy, who's got 20 to 30 years of experience talking with more conservative audiences, to see how it is that we could make sure people are following us and we're not losing them. We had a traditional type of survey that's online, phone, and in person. We had a focus group that helped us refine the kinds of questions we were going to ask. And then we set out to see what the hunting and angling community specifically thought about climate change. So what you see here is pretty typical for a hunting and angling community. It is not specifically 50-50 in gender, nor in ethnicity, but that is representative of, unfortunately, of the hunting and angling community. We have a lot of work to do in the DEI space. So, knowing that we had a strong demographic representation, we started asking things about climate change, and the first thing we wanted to know is, do you believe that climate change is happening? Pretty basic stuff, but you kind of have to start at the pretty basic stuff. 72% say climate change is happening, and that isn't groundbreaking, but it's important to note that Yale, who's been doing studies for the past 15 years, they're now showing that 74% of Americans are saying the same thing. So hunters and anglers are saying the same thing at the same amounts as the typical American. And of that 72%, we saw that 74% said that it's human caused. So all upsides is the way I'm seeing this. We also asked, what are you noticing? So we know you're spending days and weeks in the field. What are you seeing more of or less of, or maybe no change at all? It kind of came out regionally the way you might expect. So fish are being affected by higher water temperatures and frequency of fire. Lots of increase there in the west. In the northeast, you see numbers of ticks and fleas and the diseases associated with them. In the south and the Midwest, weird weather. We definitely needed to dig into that one a little bit more to understand what that means. So the other thing that we asked was, what are you associating with climate change? What are you seeing and what are you associating with climate change? There was a long list of things that we know are being impacted by climate change. And you see the higher numbers up at the top, but the yellow box indicates where there is less support, less understanding, less connection between what they're seeing and the fact that climate change is happening, and climate change is happening to them. So we know we have an opportunity and we have an area to focus on. The other thing that we wanted to know is, do you see it affecting you, your hunting and fishing, and your family? And the majority of people said it's gonna happen now, between now and within the next 20 years. And at first I saw that and my heart sunk, honestly. 20 years? We don't have time for 20 years, people. But then I thought, if you are a parent that has just let your kid go off to college, 20 years happen like that. And a lot of the people answering the questions were parents with kids in college. If you are a new parent, you think 20 years is far, far away, and it's not. If you're in Congress, that's 4 farm bills, if you're lucky, if they happen on time, right? And it's 10 sessions of Congress. So bringing it home to those points for the actual decision makers was important for us to see this is an optimistic number. And the other thing we asked them is about solutions. What solutions do you support? And we definitely wanted to know about nature-based solutions because that is where we are focused. And across parties, across hunt-only, fish-only, hunt and fish, how they identified, nature-based solutions are widely embraced. So even 30 by 30, when you think about the people who were most against the idea of 30 by 30, it was conservatives. Hunters and anglers were right there with them. But when you don't call it 30 by 30, when you talk about what it is, what you can do with it, people support it. There's something about a name and there's something about things being politicized. So that is a learning in itself. So when we took all this, we needed to be able to frame the issue. We need to be able to help hunters and anglers get to making the connections that we already know. Some of the key takeaways that we had, some new, some reinforced, solutions versus problems. People are exhausted after COVID, and just in general, they don't want more problems. They don't want to feel like the world is crumbling around them, doom and gloom. They want to see that there is a space for them and there's a solution out there. Not one solution, but many. They need to see personal connections, so stories matter, people matter, seeing themselves in those stories and the relevance to them. And honestly, when our pollster told me that people aren't going to understand resilience in nature, and I said, keep the questions in there anyway, we'll just explain it to them. And then they didn't understand what resilience in nature is. They get it, what it means to people, how to be resilient, but not everyone's a biologist or in the conservation field. So for you, in tackling the idea of resilience, it's a difficult concept for people to understand. Something that was reinforced for us, hunters and anglers don't want to talk to the federal government. not news, but they do actually support and want to hear from the USDA and the national or state level fish and wildlife agencies, other farmers, other sportsmen. And the other reinforced was that videos work. TikTok it's real for a reason. People like videos, and so why not capitalize on it? The top messages that we walked away with, the things that work for hunters and anglers, for conservatives, is the legacy message and the economics message. So he mentioned that hunters and anglers and the amount of money that is put toward conservation, it is true, it is surprising, it is unknown, except if you're a hunter and angler. There's a lot of pride in that. There's a lot of conservation ethic, and they want to keep the spaces special. So from that, we decided to do some web-based outreach. We designed a website, as one does. And the most important thing of that we needed to do was to show people and decision makers, what is nature-based solutions? What does it look like? And it can be in your state. So by the end of 2024, we'll have this all green, but each one of those is an example of different types of nature-based solutions in states. And then we included personal stories, again, having people that were unexpected and unlikely advocates talking about climate change, just saying climate, normalizing it is super important. And then we made a video.
How can healthy habitats help to stop climate change? Healthy soils, waters, forests, wetlands, and grasslands absorb and store carbon from the atmosphere, or would otherwise contribute to a changing climate. We're all made up of carbon. We exhale carbon dioxide and release it by burning coal, natural gas, oil, and wood. Plants, soils, and water, meanwhile, take in carbon and store it. Too much carbon dioxide in our atmosphere has created a warming effect similar to a greenhouse. And a changing climate is impacting our hunting and fishing. As seasons shift, wildfires rage, animal migration patterns change, and waters warm to a point where fish are in distress. Healthy habitat boosts carbon storage. Damaged habitat can provide this benefit and may actively contribute to climate change. By maintaining and improving our lands and waters, we can better support fish, wildlife, and our hunting and fishing while reversing climate change. Learn more about these nature-based solutions at trcp.org/climate.
So that's one video, but we have 6 more coming that will go into the different landscape categories. It needed to be at a high level, pretty simple. One of the things that I was seeing based on the polling was that people don't know what climate change is. They don't get it. They don't see what it is to them. You saw that map, and it was what I called a reverse NIMBYism, or a different take on NIMBYism. They could only see what was in their backyard. And to be able to understand climate and that carbon is stored in the soil was a whole new concept to the majority of the people that we talk to. So we have to start pretty simple with the majority of our population, and I'm sure that applies to the rest of America. The other thing that we noticed was action alerts after sharing these types of things got better results. You can see the difference in sharing going from 1 or 5 to 25. So good news, bad news, and this is where I'll leave you. The good news is you can use intentional communication, be solutions-oriented with personal stories, have an emphasis on the co-benefits, so the emphasis on water, the emphasis on wildlife, have new and different modes, so add in videos if you haven't, having your old CEO, your experienced CEO doing TikTok. Ouch. If my CEO was here, he would agree. Because I've been trying to get him to do TikTok videos. We'll get there. To just have different spaces where you can be having the conversation, but also have new and different voices, making it real to you and real to the community. The bad news is everyone thinks they're going to be able to get someone to understand what climate change is, and they need to get involved by having a really great argument and a fantastic mic drop moment. There is no mic drop moment. It is going to take time. And I think I heard someone else say that here, and most definitely in the, change moves at the speed of trust. That's most definitely the case with conservatives and with hunters and anglers specifically. That's But the good news is they will change. People come to decisions over time. There's more to understand around how to frame it connected to funding, because the thing that we didn't ask is, do you support all these really great things for the environment, which felt like a natural yes. But will you pay for it? So there's that next phase of our engagements that we have to do. And that's it. And the thing stopped at 2 seconds about 10 seconds ago, but yeah.
We're gonna have to do some Q&A, and I'll take that thing so that doesn't fall off. Oh, do I have questions? And I will say, have any of y'all been to TRCP's party in Washington, D.C., their annual gathering? Peter, would you agree it's like the best hoedown in the Beltway? They have good, yeah, they have good swag and good bling. But it's intentional, and I will say, over the years, I've seen this invitation into other segments of the industry that it's been incredibly strategic. It's been incredibly intentional. You know, for personal history for Luis, my American grandfather owned a fly fishing and bird hunting shop in St. Louis, Missouri, was the first Orvis dealership in the Midwest. And when I think of Orvis as a traditional family-owned, steep, deep, in the conservative side of things, just hired their first director of sustainability, who actually came from the snowboarding industry, Laura Schaefer. So times are changing. Yeah. So with that, I want to ask, what's the biggest misconception about the hunting and angling community when it comes to this kind of work?
Good, it's working.
There you go, yep.
So I think it's automatic. There's no connection to conservatives or to hunters and anglers and climate change. There's no belief that they would be in the conversation. That's the biggest misconception, and we're hoping to clear that up by also getting more voices into the space.
That's good. You know, it's going to be a good one. Everybody don't giggle. So what are the particular challenges when it comes to working with conservative politicians to make progress towards climate and biodiversity outcomes? And I'll throw a cynical comment in there at the end. You know, sometimes I've heard people say, well, in speaking to a person like that, don't even say climate or biodiversity, choose a different word to get to the same result. So, you know, any challenges, tips, tricks? Is it truly speaking a different language? Or are you still trying to find that common ground?
Well, I can't put them all with a broad brush.
That's fair.
Yeah, because there are some that I've recently heard I can't even say nature-based solutions to, and or natural infrastructure, and that's okay. But I would say that politicians get into a bit of a negative feedback loop. So they need to get elected, and then they need to get re-elected, and they've seen our society show them either an apathy for getting engaged or a pure hatred, because they're already politicized. And so you can get into this space where I'm not allowed to talk about it because my constituents don't let me talk about it. And that is where we're trying to come in, showing them that constituents do want them to talk about it. Constituents do want them to care. I see you, Peter. And so in that way, you're helping them to step out of the negative feedback loop. You're helping them to feel safe. So I can say nature-based solutions and climate to plenty of conservative politicians and their staffers, especially when we show them what it can look like and how it can impact their economy at a state level, at a national level, as well as all the co-benefits that come along. Peter.
You alluded to it, but I really think you just spend a minute. I don't know how many people in this audience understand the fees that accrue to federal agencies that come from this community that pay for conservation or access or Dingle Johnson, you know,
Right.
all those things. It's so important for the other end, let's say the left end of the conservation movement to understand that.
Well, and I'm going to piggyback off of your question, Peter, to make sure everybody heard. So Peter's asking about legislation, like the Dingle Act and some of the other pieces of legislation out there that has created this, I don't want to call it an excise tax, but a taxation infrastructure that feeds into this system of conservation and stewardship. And it's significant. And I have had personal conversations with folks, hunting and fishing folks, that have said to me, let me get this straight. I've spent $1,200 for a fly rod that I love, carbon fiber. It's gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful, real, custom made. And you've spent $1,200 for a pair of skis. I have put in X amount of money on that fly rod, and you have put in what? Now, concurrently, shotgun, beautiful shotgun, $7,000. I've paid X amount of dollars for this shotgun. I take it bird hunting. You have paid $7,000 or more for a mountain bike, and your mountain bike has put in what? So this conversation is evolving and changing and tracking. And so what I would want to say with respect to, yes, if you could speak to Peter about the legislation that currently exists, and this ties to a larger question that came from Slido, how transferable are your polling results to non-TRCP members? Conservation is in your name. What does the larger population in your sector think about climate change and some of these funding questions?
Oh, yeah, sure. To clarify, the polling results are not of members. The third-party Newbridge Strategies used multiple methods to reach out to specifically hunters and anglers. And they could either be hunters, anglers, or both, because sometimes, mostly, you do both. So it just happens that we have a membership or a supportership. And that applies, so that in that case, it applies to all hunters and anglers. It is not specific. I can tell you that they had to go to very, very specific lengths to get more Western hunters and anglers. They don't want to talk to the federal government. They don't want to talk to anyone on the phone doing a poll until you hook them, and then you can't get them off the phone. And you're usually calling landlines. So it's hunters and anglers nationwide, and laws, money. I feel like he answered the question, really. That is very much the answer. We are going to parks. If you go out to recreate, if you just want to go on a hike and you have a park fee, you pretty much assume that you're paying your park fee, and that's going to go to conservation of that space. That makes complete sense. Most people get that one and probably have a pretty good idea that it exists. Most people do not know that the laws exist toward all hunting, angling, equipment, down to pieces of tackle, have a specific fee on them that is then gone back to the land LCWF. Don't test me on what LCWF.
Land and Water Conservation Fund.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's good.
LWCF. There we go.
That's wonderful. All right, our clock just hit 0, but I'm going to ask the final one because I think it applies to regenerative agriculture, everything we've been talking about today. What do you see as the biggest opportunity in the upcoming Farm Bill, since you mentioned we go in cycles of 4, which is hysterical, to advance nature-based solutions, and how is TRCP mobilizing the hook and bullet crowd for that effort?
There are so many options. You saw with the AMP method that it is real, it's doable, it just needs to be incentivized. And you saw from the polling results that there is overwhelming support for incentivizing farmers to do these practices. So it would make sense that in the Farm Bill, that happens every 5 years, and it's already late. I think it expired September 30th of this year. So we're already late for it, and given the state of the Hill, it's not going to happen anytime soon. They have bigger fish to fry in the house, just getting a leader. But the opportunities are within multiple programs, and the way that we see it, they're mostly in the conservation programs. There's a whole conservation title of the Farm Bill. And in that, farmers are able to take advantage of either loan guarantees, technical assistance, specific incentives to be able to plant certain things. There's cover crops that most people know about, but there's plenty of other things around erosion control, not using as much fertilizer, changing your water, your irrigation practices. And then there's even conservation innovation grants. That would be a great space to implement nature-based solutions in a specific space of where they like to test innovation. Nature-based solutions aren't innovation, but they feel like it to a lot of people, and it's safer to call it that way. So we could put them into the SIG space. There's so many. I could go on and
well, in continuing the tradition of accosting our speakers, please find Tiffany out in the foyer after we're done. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank me in joining. Thank you. Thank me in joining. It's been a long day, gang. Join me in thanking Tiffany Turner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow, that was a good one. Okay, so to wrap up our day, gang, I just want to add a couple of pieces. We're going to head out to the Hydro lobby for a reception, so a big thanks to Odell in New Belgium for donating beverages. They're longtime supporters of the center. You also want to check out, and Jen, I had no idea that we had this, Salazar Center hammocks. Is this like a photo op thing? Is this a prize? Is it both? Not a teaser at all. What she's saying is, get in the hammock, take a crazy picture, post it and hashtag us, and maybe, just maybe, you yourself will win a hammock. So that's good. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to debrief. If you don't stay for the reception, the shuttles are going to be out front, available to head back to the hotel at 5 p.m. Otherwise, we hope you hang out, have some conversations to wrap up your day, and then if not, we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning for breakfast and the start of day 2. Thanks, gang.